evening, everybody. Welcome around to the history program with me, Tony Browne from the Limerick Historical Society. And we're talking today about, not rubbish, we're talking on fact today. And tonight I have with me usually my I shouldn't call him my sidekick, Tom Donovan. Tom, you're welcome along to the program.
Thank you, Tony.
Usual fella this year. And this week I have Mr. and Mrs. It's like a television program, Mr. and Mrs. Karen and Mount Ievers, who are welcome along to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
But this week we're kind of branching out into County Clare, and I want to talk about for a while on Mount Ievers, which some people will know about and some people won't, especially if they're out of Ireland. They won't know about Mount Ievers House in Sixmilebridge in County Clare, which isn't really that far from Limerick City as such. And it's a house I visited at least twice out in Sixmilebridge. Tom, are you familiar, first of all, with the house?
Well, it's strange that you're at the picture of Glen Castle at the back. It was the night of Glen. The night of Glen told me about it. I think he used to call it magical. He loved Mount Ievers. And he's quoted, he's written about it, and he said it's a magical building, Mount Ievers. So he was very interested in architecture, and he mentioned it to me first. And then I came across Mount Ievers, doing the Limerick Journal. Glanduff Castle was owned, I think they got the lands through the Butlers. And there was a very interesting diary which was written by the lady there, can't think of her name now, John Cussen's sister wrote about it. So, and that's my main, and the houses of Clare. That's my connection with Mount Ievers. And I
should go tell Karen and that Tom has written a huge book on the night of Glen. Huge tome. It's about 2 inches high. We should be using a metric now, should we? But it's about 2 to 2.5 inches high. And Tom is originally from Glen, you see himself. But I was there, I said twice. I was there years and years ago with Bill McInerney. We did an outing in a beautiful summer's evening, and it wasn't long after the film being made there, the Serpent's Kiss. I remember we were up in the attic. We were all over the house, but I remember being up in the attic. You were fairly young, Norm, at that time, so a long time ago. It's 25 years ago, I'd say, roughly.
It would be, yes.
Yeah, I'd say it was anyway. And then I was back about 2 years ago with Paddy Waldron with the Kilrush Society. But Mount Ievers is a beautiful, beautiful house, and it's unusual in the sense that you have brick on the front or the back, whichever you want to choose, at the front, and then you have stonework on the back. And I mean, it's the only example really outside, I suppose, of Shannon Grove is about the nearest we have to it. Shannon Grove House in Palace Kenry. The style of the house, Shannon Grove was 1709, I think. Whereas Mount Ievers isn't far behind that, is it? What is it, 17 something?
1730s.
Is it 1730s? Yeah. But what about the upkeep of the house must be heartbreaking, is it? For both of you.
The height is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Because it's not as bad as a Victorian house that's got all these additions all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Valleys, and there's nothing you can do about them. Okay. Yeah. At least the house is fairly square.
It's a block, yeah.
And so for the size of the house, as a percentage of the size of the house compared to the roof space, the roof that needs maintenance, you've got a good percentage. So mathematically, that helps you. But the height is the problem. Height is getting up high to get stuff done and fixing things up is difficult. But we try. I did a patch up this summer, or rather last summer now at this stage, when we got a bit of good weather, and that'll keep it going for a while yet.
Yeah, because in Ben Jones' book on the House of Ireland, he said that your father and mother at the time, we're talking now here about the early 70s, he says that the commander and your mother were doing some restorations to the house. And at that, he said, you were opening it to the public, he says in that book, you know, that has been open to the public at the time. But really, it's unusual because the Ievers family was, as Tom said a minute ago, houses at Staveley's. What's the name of the house again, Tom? I can never think of the name of it.
Glenduff.
And of course, you've Castle Ievers outside in Atlacca, which is another branch of the Ievers family who moved out of County Limerick to Atlacca. And that's still standing, although it wasn't a very big house as such. Castle Ievers wasn't. I think O'Reilly's are there now. But I've been to that. I know what that is, that house, you know. But like that, it's keeping the house in some kind of order because, as people can see, that is Glen Castle behind me now. And this is that you can see just about to the left hand side there. You can just about see the Shannon, a little glimpse of the river. But that's a fairly block house as well, except that there's there were extensions onto that, onto Glen Castle on the other side, which makes it, I suppose, more troublesome in one sense. You know, it's a problem.
The Ievers, Tony, did they come from Yorkshire? Was it, or where did the Ievers family come from?
Yeah, if you asked you that now, what the Ievers family, the origin from?
Good question. That is what is most strongly assumed.
Yeah.
That is what's strongly assumed. And it's more strongly assumed because the coat of arms that the Ievers use is almost identical to the Ewer family from
Ewers,
that part of the north.
Like, I don't think you'll ever we'll never discuss or discover probably the original, you know. You can only guess and what's written. Some families did write, more didn't, you know.
I think there was a connection with Ballysteen as well. The first Ievers man came married a woman from Ballysteen. Was she Stevens or some name like that? There was some connection with Ballysteen. I remember Liam Dundon mentioning.
I never heard that.
Some Ievers married a daughter of a Captain Stevens.
Yeah.
So that's the name Stevens would come in.
I think that was Ballysteen. They came from, yeah.
I never associate that name now, Tom, with Ballysteen.
Yeah, and there was a Stevens back around Shanagod and Ballyhale as well. Come back into the Castle period. And there was some connection with the Parsons of Clarina. I'm living in Clarina now. But I think there was some intermarriage with the Parsons family in Clarina.
Craigbeck.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, well, the Parsons were in Craigbeck.
George Ievers, I think it was married, Mary Parsons.
All right.
That house you mentioned, which we have visited.
Yeah, I said it's Craigbeck house, is it?
Yeah.
We have visited there.
Kennedy's house, yeah. I know the house, yeah. I know the house. Yeah. But like that, the Ievers seem to stay clear of the landed families there. They were never titled, never got much involved in politics, what I can gather, you know.
Well, there was a Henry Ievers, and he was elected to Colonel Henry Ievers. He ran a local militia. Well, they were just for taxes. But anyway, he ran a local militia, and he did get elected to the Parliament when it was above in Dublin. And of course, that first thing that ever happened to Ireland was in 1800 to get rid of the Dublin Parliament.
He was also, Henry Ievers was also, if I'm not mistaken, he was mayor of Limerick.
Oh yeah, he was married. But what I mean is regards, you know, the titled families, they kind of probably had their own reasons to kind of stayed out of things as such. That's sort of the United Lynn did as well. I mean, his title really was only, but let's say an Irish title, you know. You know, that you won't find United Lynn in the peerage, you know. Yeah, but you know what I mean? They stayed out of, Irish family didn't get involved in big, hence the house is still there. They were able to mind their own business.
Too busy minding their estate, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's some interesting information that we've learned, you know, during the 19th century. There were quite a few Ievers from Limerick who were of the Catholic faith, and many of them were involved, you know, in home rule. And the first Feshkiol ever that was held in County Clare was held at this house in 1899. And the woman who organized it was Norman's great grand aunt, Mary Ievers, who was a member of the Gaelic League.
Yeah, the Gaelic League, yeah.
She was very involved with the local community, teaching Irish, and also had a knitting cottage industry set up for the local ladies in the village here. So we've actually found a picture of her. We didn't have a photograph of her, but on eBay, I'm a collector. I look for books and letters and things that have to do with Ireland. We actually found her photograph on eBay, and yeah, so it's here in the house now.
It is, because a man got in touch with me last year from someone in France that he came across. Tom, you're familiar with the Abjans out in Pallasgreen. He found a picture of one of the Abjan family, a painting done about 1800. How did it end up in the south of France? This painting. I mean, I don't think God even knows. How it ended up out there. And he got in touch with me to know about the Abjan family. They had a big house out in Pallasgreen in County Limerick. And the Abjans, who ended up, some of them went to America and they ended up as Upjohn of the pharmaceutical companies. Michael Dwyer, John was on about that. They ended up as Upjohns in America, but they were the Abjans from Pallasgreen. What about this story about the brick being brought over as ballast over to Ballantyre and passed from hand to hand?
Well,
I'm afraid I'm a bit of a skeptic now when it comes to some things.
well, I'm sure there's an element of truth.
Oh, there is something, yeah.
The story is that it was passed from hand to hand from Ballantyre to the site of the house, which is like more than a mile nearly. What would make sense is if it was passed from hand to hand out from the bottom of the boat up onto the cart.
Yeah.
That would have happened. But you need a good lot of men to go from Ballantyre.
There's something. I'd say people did lift it by, what I mean by lift is they did carry bricks, There were probably some men there. They obviously had carts, but then just imagine it yourself. If a cart is full, you say, sure, I'll move a few bricks. I'll move a few bricks for you, by hand, that they would have piled them up. But I could not see this thing of passing it hand to hand, working up with that one, But
they'd probably be able to throw a big 20 foot.
Yeah, because the river is the Ogari is tidal as far as Ballantyre. Because last week on the programme we done Hiram Wood, who has just done a book on the Quakers in Limerick, and he goes into Ballantyre and about the Sykes family, who originally built Ballantyre, and they had a big soap factory inside. His pictures in the book actually of the soap, what's left of the soap factory at Ballantyre, which is Roach Kelly's. But the river is tidal, so they did obviously bring boats up as far as Ballantyre. Hence the house being built there at that point, that the river was tidal up as far as there. It's hard to believe that when you look at the river at Bunratty, that it could be tidal up as far as Ballantyre, which it obviously still is. But as regards the brick, what been brought in, I mean, the Irish weren't familiar with red brick at the time. The Dutch mainly did when they brought in these Dutch brick makers.
Yeah.
But like that, it's a beautiful house. I mean, to look at Mount Ievers, it's like a doll's house. If people are not familiar with it, it is from the front. To look at the house, to see the gates in front with the walls on either side. It's like something you'd imagine you can kind of lift up and transfer someplace else, because it's not as nice from the stone side, although it makes it complete. I wonder why that was. Why did it do that side? It's stone. Is it weather or what is it?
Well, Henry Ievers was probably very cheap, right? Because there was a trade going back and forth to Holland, right? Because that's what it came from. Okay. So if the bricks were coming over from Holland in the ballast of the boats coming over, once the bricks were out, stones and rocks would have been put back in its place, and they would have been used as foundations, for the house being built in after that. Over there and building their dikes because they were short of stones.
Yeah.
So it would have been a convenient swap. So he definitely got the bricks cheap. And I mean, I've kind of seen the records of some of the building of the house.
Couldn't have been that cheap though, was it? Karen, what you make, must have been expensive, brick.
Are we sure they came from Holland?
Well, that's that.
I'd say so.
Trade was rapeseed oil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Well,
bricks. If the bricks were coming as ballast,
oh,
they
yeah.
would-
Yeah.
Well, the Irish weren't used to red brick anyway at the time. They didn't know what red brick was. And also you had, don't forget that this idea of red bricks after well, took off in the continent first. It was something different, you know, to come over. But the brick must have been expensive somewhere. You know, at the how. I don't think that was used strictly as ballast. Probably he knew that this red brick was available. Did he order it? You know, or which I believe he did. He didn't just take it as ballast because stone would have been easier for them to use as ballast. They were used to using stone and ballast on all ships, but not red brick. And they're fairly light, the brick. They weren't heavy, really heavy as such. Anyway, that's a story for another day.
But if they were expensive, it may have been that once they had the front finished for economy, they just decided to do the back by stone rather than.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe, you know, that they hadn't enough brick or they didn't want to spend money in it. Or what I used to think was weather. Is there much, where does the rain come from on the house? Does it come to the front or the back?
Okay, right. The brick is on the north side,
The north side, yeah. Oh, yeah.
so it's rare enough that we get any wind from or rain from the north.
You're getting
Yeah.
it. I tell you, you're getting it at the moment. You're
That's
getting it last week.
3 days a year. That's about it. In the
When the
winter.
north wind blows, it'll bring snow, and it does, you know. But you said that's north.
That's north, and
Yeah.
the stone side is to the south.
Mm.
So then the gable sides then are east and west. And so the prevailing winds and the prevailing rain comes from, we'll say, the southwest.
And Norman, what was the relationship with the tenantry? You know, the fact that the house survived, I suppose, is indicative of a good relationship, because if there wasn't, it probably would have been burnt, you know.
Well, yes, I mean, there was also a few changes of ownership
Mm.
going to different branches
The branches of the family, yeah.
of the family.
Yeah.
And Robert Ievers from Castle Ievers in Atlaka bought the house from Henry Ievers after Henry got into financial difficulty.
Okay.
So I come down from his side.
But from
So
what
you-
I've read from various newspaper, you know, clippings we have, and basically, well, James Butler Ievers, who was also, I think, living at Glendalough Castle, he was a landlord in Limerick and in Clare, and he would be your great grand uncle. He was part of this land commission, and the Ievers were actually some of the first landlords to, you know, sell off the land
Yeah.
to tenants. And we've actually read an account from, it's on the military archives, about the daughters of Eyre Ievers, who would have been living here in the early 1900s.
Yes.
His daughters would bring
And
food.
he'd be Major Eyre Ievers.
Yeah, he was a recruiter in Limerick
Yeah.
for the Royal Munster Fusiliers. But
Yeah.
anyway, his two daughters were involved in bringing food hampers to the IRA prisoners
That were from Clare.
that were from Clare.
Mm.
And that might have had, I don't know, some bearing on the house still standing.
Yeah,
But they
yeah.
were on very good relations with the parish priest here. He was very involved, Father Little, with, you know, the organizing of the Feshkiol here.
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah, there was a very good relationship between the tenants. And from what I've read, there was
Mhm.
never eviction here. So
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been, because most of the, it's a kind of a rule of thumb that I use. If houses have survived, there was never a problem with the IRA as such, you know, if the houses survived. That stands for most of Ireland, that you can tell, because up in the 6 counties where there was mainly Presbyterians and Church of Ireland, the houses nearly all survived. You know, there was never any trouble in the 6 counties, you know, or even Donegal for that matter. It's mainly down south that most of the houses were burned out in rough areas.
They were the Ievers were intermarried with the Butlers.
Well,
Well, yeah.
Yes, his three-time
crime.
grandmother came from Castle Cryn.
That's a crime.
Yeah.
Her sister-in-law married the butler, James Butler from Castle Cryn. And yeah, that's another interesting connection. And actually, was it last year, I found two paintings belonging to two of Norman's spinster cousins that had lived in Castle Cryn. And I was able to get those from an auction online and have them, I had them sent over here. So we actually have paintings that were hanging in Castle Cryn. They're now in our hall here. So
Because
I think,
sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I think one of those Butlers was married to Lord Clarina, and she was killed. She was killed in a carriage accident around 1900. A runaway horse, and she was killed. I think she was the butler who was married to. She was Lady Clarina.
the other two sisters were spinsters, and that sister Sophia married Lord Clarina.
Sophia, yeah.
Sophia.
Yeah, she was killed in a road accident, which is unusual in 1900 or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, is she buried, Tom, over in Clarine up in the hill? You know, is she buried up there?
No, I think she went back to Castle Crine.
Yeah, she's buried in the graveyard. I've been to it recently, so she's buried there. And this branch of the Butlers actually descends from the Duke of Ormond, and so in Norman's ancestry, I found the daughter of an Irish chieftain. What's her name again? Princess Sive. Yeah. So seems they all intermarried.
Yeah, in the beginning, the Butlers, they married.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the Lord Clarina, they have a grave built on their own grounds, a graveyard at the back over in the quite big house actually. Not far from there. There are graves belong to the Clarinas. I know up there on the hill. But all that's left of Castle Cryn now, I think, is the lodge, isn't it? Wasn't that restored?
Which has been restored, and someone, yes, it's very nice, and that's about it, I think.
Yeah. I remember seeing it a few years ago when they were going to restore the lodge, but the house itself, I know, is gone quite a while now, unfortunately. It's a bit. But your own house outside is in fairly good shape, in a sense, isn't it?
Thank you.
But it is, for such, excuse the expression, for such an old house, because we didn't actually.
Resources.
Yeah.
With modest resources, we do our best.
Yeah. What year again we were saying? What year do you think it was built? 1720, 1730, was it?
30s, yeah.
Yeah.
They finished at 37. They called it quits.
Yeah. But talking of marriages, they had no other choice only to intermarry, especially to keep the estates together, that families. And it's interesting to see what I'd like to know is, how did they meet? At times you'd often wonder, how they would have met. How did somebody, we'll just say one of the Ievers, you might see that they married somebody from a landed family in just say Wexford, for example. And I'd often say to myself, I wonder how did they meet?
And Bowles. A lot of the Irish families met in England, in Bath, and that's where they went to.
I suppose so, yeah.
Holidays. They went on holidays and they met. But I know, like I said to you before, Tony, that marriages kept Castle going. The money that came in, down through the years. It was the wives who brought the money.
That's why Norman married Karen there, you see. The same thing, No, but it did. Because we were discussing this 2 weeks ago when we talking about the night at Glen, that his mother, wasn't it, that married? She married a second time.
She married a millionaire, an oil millionaire. But back to even going back into the 19th century and the 18th century, the wives brought in big dowries. Like Lord Dunraven's daughter brought in 10,000 at the close of the 19th century, and that kept it afloat. And by marrying astutely, they brought in money. So so it wasn't a choice. Like people say, why didn't they marry one of their tenants? It wasn't a choice. You couldn't, because it'd be financial ruin apart from anything else. So and that's why Karen said that Ievers, and and the butlers and all those people they married into each other. So
I just add in here, I recently found on eBay a little booklet of a calendar of Irish saints. And the signature on the cover is Moira de Butler, who would be Mary Butler, who would have been part of the Gaelic League and who was the woman who suggested the name Sinn Féin. So, I mean, she was Norman's cousin. So, I mean, I've turned up some, looking through Paddy Waldron's database, I can, connect on a lot of people.
Well, it's not me knowing Paddy Waldron's relatives. We're myself, Tom, now, are the best of friends of Paddy Waldron. But I don't want to get involved in Paddy Waldron's relatives now. That's the story for another day, isn't it, Tom? We've travelled with Paddy Waldron, I tell you, and we've heard about all his relatives, Our Paddy's funny, But I was like, get in touch with him actually to come on, and we talk. He's gone mad on DNA, Paddy is. I think he's sleeping DNA, I think, morning, noon and night, But anyway, but that's another story. But like that, the something came into my head there. Oh yeah, that the Ievers family, there's nothing about them in the incumbent estates that they didn't really become incumbent as such. They were lucky that there were other members of the other families, like we said, the people in Castle Ievers and Atlaka. Because in 1850, when I suppose we call it the bankrupt court series, what the incumbent estates were, and so many families, the estates became, they had no money because some of them did genuinely try to feed, which is something we never hear about. Tried to feed the tenants as such, tried to keep them as fed as they could, but then of course they ran into problems with money. Apart from not even involved, some of them went in because of gambling, we know that, but some of the families didn't try to feed the tenants as best they could, but it didn't.
Norman mentioned it. Was it Robert Ievers got into trouble financially? Was it just bad management, or did he?
Well, Colonel Henry that was into politics. He got into financial trouble.
All right. Yeah.
Robert Ievers kind of bought him out, essentially.
Oh yeah, Robert bought him out. So yeah. So there's a lesson. That's why the others didn't go into politics. They managed their estate.
Probably, I'd say so. Because you mentioned the Munster Fusiliers. I had two uncles in the Munster Fusiliers. I had, but of course they never came home. And but like that, they were my uncles, and I hear people saying about their grandfathers and their great uncles, but they were actually my father's brothers that were in the Munster Fusiliers in the First World War. So they could have been under one of the Ievers, for all we know. And I mean that could be easily checked out as well. We'd have to go to you, Tom, I think, or get on to the Sergeant Major as the man at Lance and all that. Myself and Tom know who that is. He could answer that problem for us, But like that, a lot of them didn't join the English Army at the time. And again, it was easy money for them. I shouldn't say easy money, but it was a regular income, like your father, for example, Norman. It was regular money, that came in.
There's a social standing aspect to it, right?
Yes.
If you consider yourself titled or gentry, etc., I mean, like, what kind of profession could you legitimately do?
That is true,
without shame upon the name of the family? That's why they went into the military. It was about the only career or politics. It was about the only career to do.
The clergy.
Exactly. The clergy. Well,
just going back to just going back to the building of the house, Karen. You said that you had some records there, of bricks that are coming in. And is there any records of the designer, John Roddery, is it, who built the house?
Yeah.
Any records of commissioning him or any plan?
Yeah, there's quite a few records that were stored by one of Norman's cousins. She gave them to the National Archives many years ago. And one of Norman's cousins actually had them transferred to County Clare. So they're now, the archives, the building archives are now in Clare County Council.
The local studies. Yeah.
So they can be
Accessed
accessed
there.
there, I
Yeah.
assume, once the lockdown is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine, they can be accessed anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this could be on at the internet. I wonder. I don't know. Dan O'Brien might know that now. If they were,
It's shown, the more pressure that's put, but it'd be put on the council to get someone to actually set about putting it up on the data.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Well, in Limerick now, they get fast workers and that to do scanning. A lot of books have gone up and a lot of old journals which aren't available. They're putting them online, which is great.
Well,
Because
we have a scan of everything. They were very kind to give us a scan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
might eventually get that, uploaded to our
On the
website.
website.
yeah, it takes time.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But you need somebody as well that has the will to do it, which is unfortunately, that
Yeah.
there's so many people in archives, even for that matter, and it's a job to them. There's no love for the thing.
I think Michael McNamara wrote an article on Mount Ievers in the Sixmilebridge magazine, a historical journal. It's gone back 20 years ago, I'd say. Michael McNamara?
Is it Mars,
It's
Michael?
up the road, yeah.
Yeah. I think he wrote an article on Mount Ievers. Just
well,
memory.
So an article a few years ago in the other Clare by Gerard Costello, and then there was another article by Dick Cronin and Martin Breen.
Yeah.
They did. Well, they were more interested in the old tower house that was there.
Yeah.
It used to be there.
We have
Yeah, that's it. Actually, I have that. I have that drawing at home. Yeah, I have that. And that's what Martin Breen and what's his name above in Corofin were interested in. Mainly the old tower house as such. Because I'm fairly friendly with Martin and I know what he's interested in. He's interested in that mainly tower house. I think Martin has much time now for big houses, kind of blows me out when I get talking to him about big houses, But Martin's interested in the old tower houses and how people lived in them, that kind of thing, Anyway, Tom, go on, sorry.
No, go on, that's fine. Yeah.
It's very awkward when you're having somebody in front of you on Zoom.
Yeah.
You know who's going to talk next. It's very awkward. I wish I wish they were live. It's a pity. You need a person live and in front of you. You need a person because you kind of correspond better.
When we get our shots, we can meet up.
When you get two more shots. Don't be saying that in Limerick.
I'd be interested in the cottage industry in Mount Ievers because, like, lots of houses, like we say down in Mitchelstown now, the Lady Kingston had a knitting industry, and then back in Mount Trenchard, the Rices and Mary Spring Rice was involved in the Gaelic League as well, like the two Spencer women in Mount Ievers. You can't say Spencer now, can you? But anyway, they like a lot of, say, like, when we went to school, we thought it was black and white landlords and tenants, but there's a lot of crossover, and like that, Mary Spring Rice brought in some IRA people when they were wounded and dressed their wounds, and she was sympathetic towards them, and of course Mount Trenchard survived to what it is today. But it's been an interesting study to do all the, say, Anglo-Irish who were involved in the Gaelic League and the efforts to better their tenants' life.
I hope they don't end up like Bones Court. Didn't that survive too? And look at what happened in the end.
And Bones Court was, of course, designed by the Rotary family as well.
Yeah. Rotary seemed to have plenty of work. Well, Rotary worked on Shannon Grove as well. And you can see, have both of you been to Shannon Grove?
I've never been there, but they have a staircase very much like ours.
Beautiful. Oh yeah, they have. Because I'm no amount, both of us have been to Shannon Grove, and it's a beautiful house. And to think it's just perched there, it's just perched in the middle of kind of nowhere. But there are two buildings on either side. But Rotary worked on that. And you can see the similarity. Not that there's anything as big as Mount Ievers, height to that, but it gives you there's something about it that it's kind of something the same as Mount Ievers, when you see
Yeah.
the style. There are a few other houses, but some of them are in a bad state. What's the other one that I didn't inherit? Riddlestown out
Yeah.
in Rathkeel. Look at the state that's in now.
Ah,
You
yeah.
know, there's a beautiful staircase in that as well. And
10 years ago, well, it was more, probably 15 years ago. Nightline's dead, about 10 years. But I remember being up there, and there was bales of hay stacked up against the front door and the window, and round bales and cattle feeders, and it was just, I thought it was terrible. Even though it was in ruin, lack of respect, like for the old building. When you consider all the people who lived there and everything, That's the way. We don't have a national trust, and the United Glen maintained that if we had some sort of a national trust like they do in England, there'd be some, benefit in keeping those houses.
I should tell people, in case anyone tunes in, they'll be wondering who is he talking to, or what are we talking about. I should say that we're here on Laird Media, and if you want to access any of these programs, you can on Laird Media, and we hope that we get them up on our own site, Limerick Historical Society's site as well. And if you just, you'll find them on YouTube anyway, if you want to get onto YouTube. And I have with me tonight Tom Donovan as usual, and also I have Carmen and Norman Ievers from Sixmilebridge, a house that they own called Mount Ievers. It's in Sixmilebridge, and if anybody wants to find out more about it, maybe if God is good and the shots come, we might have a good summer. We'll see. If not this year, I'm afraid we'll have to wait till next year. And maybe we could organise an outing for our own society house to Mount Ievers if we get the weather. We're all kind of live in hope, I suppose. Listen, well, I have it there now, Cam. Something else I just wanted to talk about. We're already about 40 minutes on. Just to get away from that for a minute, what are your impressions on St. Valentine, as today is the 14th of February?
Oh, well, it's also Norman's late mother's birthday today. So, and we just had a 1-year anniversary mass on local parish webcam. So we were watching that. So, it was her birthday today, but she's celebrating in heaven. And yes.
What was her name?
Her name was Brita. Brita. O'Halloran. Yes. Before
why didn't they bring a piece of Valentine into it? What could it be? What would be a kind of a female for Valentine? I can't think of Val or something. Yeah. It's amazing that they didn't.
I suppose it's close enough to the 1st of February to get Brita.
Oh, Brita. Yeah, it probably was the 1st of February. Brita was, but I know St. Valentine really wasn't kind of very common. Only in the males. Valentine, obviously. All the Vals were all born around today, and of course you had the Bridgets on the 1st of February. But St. Valentine, do you know anything about him? There's a lot of rubbish about him, I'm afraid. If we check on he's reputed to have been a kind of a priest in the 3rd century.
Yeah.
Most of, there's lots of things can't be proven at this stage, I'm afraid. But seemingly, the man, have you ever come across much of him, Tom? Jeffrey Chaucer, I think.
It was a bishop near Rome, and he was, the story is he was beheaded for marrying women against the wishes. The Romans wanted their men to fight in the armies because they had a huge empire.
Oh, yeah.
They were afraid if they got married, they would be inclined to go fighting wars.
but stayed home.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted much to be so. But Valentine defied their wishes, and they had him beheaded for. That's one story. There's lots of stories. The stories about how he cured a blind woman as well, and that he left her when he was being executed. He left her a note, "Dear Valentine."
My Valentine.
This is,
Could you get that note on eBay? I would be grand. If you could find that note, that St. Valentine left, it would be handy. But
the Irish connection, I remember visited
Whitefriars,
the Carmelite Church in Angel Street, off near St. Stephen's Green in Dublin, and they claim to have the heart of Saint Valentine, and there was a famous priest called John Spratt, I think, or Spratt.
Spratt,
Yeah.
yeah. The man,
And he went to Rome, and he did a lot of good work with the poor around where Temple Bar is now, and out in poor areas of Dublin, down around the Liberties, where poor people were. And he made friends with the Pope at the time. Pope, I think it's Pope Gregory VII.
No, Gregory the 16th.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the 16th. Go on anyway, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
So many Gregories get mixed up. Pope Gregory anyway, and Pope Gregory is reputed to have given him a present of the heart of Saint Valentine, and that's in a gold box up in the church. But there's relics of Saint Valentine all over the world, even down to shavings of his bone. In some people claim to have it, it's a bit like the relics of Saint Martin and all these different saints like this. They reckon that have more bones than a whale if you put them all together.
You were first class relic then, haven't you? You were second class relic.
Yeah.
Which is and the
I think the heart would take precedence, or would be a first class relic. But you see, then again, like when I grew up, I never heard of Saint Van. He was also the patron saint of beekeeping, I think.
But I thought that was what's her name down in Cork. What's her name? God, with the funny St. Gobnet. I thought she was the patron saint to give beekeepers.
Well, you see, you could have more than one. And there was probably male and females. So you have actually he was bishop of Narnia, which is a different going off on a different track now. Valentine.
We go to hell, mind.
What?
Will we go to hell?
Oh yeah, well, we're cynics, but
It would be nice.
But the whole thing was just hijacked by card companies and commercialism. They were looking for a gap between Christmas and Easter, and it was a convenient way of selling cards and chocolates and selling guilt for fellas who didn't. I didn't see any flowers behind Karen there anyway.
Well, I'm waiting for him in a minute to pick up the roses and say, I just want to give her these, Have you ever come across much about him now? She wasn't going to be outdone here, I only say you're only doing that now because we're on the screen, you see, But has he got chocolates? I want to know, Had you heard much about him, Karen? About St. Valentine, only probably cards, rather.
Well, I knew that he had been beheaded, and I didn't know much more other than that. But it's something that I grew up with. I mean, we celebrated in America, and and
you probably just heard about the cards, and people sending. The trick was, whether it still applies or not. You were to send a card to somebody without signing it. It was supposed to be anonymous.
Yeah.
Going to the person that you wanted to send it to. You weren't to put your name on it. And if the person got 2 or 3 cards, then there was kind of trouble. She was kind of trying to figure out, did it come from her father or did it come from the fella next door, or who they came from? But that was the thing, that you weren't supposed to sign the card. But then they brought out these big, I remember they brought out cards and they were about 3 foot, about a good 2 foot big, padded cards. You wouldn't see those anymore now. And they came in boxes with a big heart in the middle. And they were awful things, to send. And everybody, now I know one particular man in Ennis that Tom would know, that went into a girl in a bank. She was working in a bank, and he wanted to give her a bunch of flowers. And he waited till it was on a Friday, and the bank shut at 3 o'clock on a Friday. And he got in the queue at about 2:30. And as the queue got smaller and smaller, the girl behind the teller got redder and redder. And the staff wouldn't she asked about 2 or 3 other workers there to relieve her, let her go away. They wouldn't do that. They knew what was happening. And this individual arrived up with a bunch of roses to her. I said, Happy Valentine's. She said, I will talk to you in a minute when the bank closes,
Well,
if I was explaining this person now, he nearly know him, And he went anyway. She had a few words with him as soon as the bank shut at 3 o'clock. You know, and they all clapped and cheered inside when he handed her the bunch of roses. He didn't do much for his, what let's say, for his love affair with her anyway.
Oh, no.
No.
Well, I can tell you another story of unrequited love is the word that a guy bought a large bunch of roses, a dozen roses for this girl one day in an office. And I won't say where, but people will know where I worked. And the roses were presented to her, and she opened the window and threw them out the window and stormed off crying. And another guy went downstairs and picked them up and said to be ashamed to let him go to waste of home to his wife.
Oh God, we got a long way off of Mount Ievers talking about roses. Oh God, it's funny.
No.
Oh, God. But that's St. Valentine. The last thing I say on St. Valentine is this thing about the birds mating, that they're reputed to have mated on the 1st of the 14th of February. Supposed to be connected to that. But again,
well, that's spring anyway. That's the spring anyway, like, you know.
Geoffrey Chaucer, the man that wrote the Canterbury Tales, is he supposed to have brought the St. Valentine's thing to life, and about what was all about love and a few things like that, you know. Other than that,
and love birds,
yeah.
But I mean, but it's the beginning of spring anyway, so you know that's what happens. Like that's, you know, you're going to have birds mating anyway, so I don't think it's anything to do with St. Valentine.
Yeah, but then the Orthodox Church don't celebrate it till I think it's in July. I think it's the 6th of July that the Orthodox Church celebrates St. Valentine's Day, or their version of St. Valentine. I think there were one or two anyway, but like that, it's something. It's I suppose part of our history, and now make live, I suppose, because people in Dublin, a lot of the young are females looking for, well, males I suppose as well, go to Whitefriars Church. You've never been there, Carol, to the church in Dublin. No. It's on the quays in Dublin, and it's what is it? Whoever just says is near, Tom. What's the best way to explain this?
What's near Temple Bar?
What?
Temple Bar.
Yeah, in Temple Bar. Yeah, the church. It's a very small church, and that's where this box is in there, which reputed to be the heart of St. Valentine.
Something occurred to me there, Tony, and go back to Mount Ievers. Was all the land in the parish, in the diocese of Killaloe in Mount Ievers?
I was past that now minutes ago.
All right, okay.
Limerick, I think. You're in the diocese of Limerick, yeah. I think you're in the diocese of Limerick.
We were in the diocese of Killaloe.
Were you? I thought the stream divided the diocese.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, that say 300 meters from the house south, there's the bounds into Cracklow parish.
Cracklow, yeah.
But there's like Sixmilebridge parish and there's Cracklow parish.
Yeah, Cracklow is in Limerick. The Cracklow parish itself, I know, is in the diocese of Limerick. Yeah. Because I remember as you come into Sixmilebridge from Limerick, you have the little church there on the left hand side, and then you have the other church above, the one on the other end of the village. And I just presumed, I did, whether I'm right or wrong, that was why you ended up with two churches, that you had one in the Limerick diocese and one in the Killaloe diocese, because people find it hard to believe that even Cracklow is in the Limerick diocese. You know, the diocese are very confusing there. You know, when you start, you just take it for granted that they're run by the county boroughs, but they don't, you know, because in County Limerick, out places like Maru and out there now, Maru is in the diocese of Cashel and Emly, different altogether, and it's only a couple of miles out from Limerick. But the diocese, there's a stone in the river there near Ballington's Bridge that I know about. As you go over that new bridge there, just to your left-hand side going from Limerick. And there's a stone in the river there where three dioceses actually meet. Killaloe, Limerick and Cashel and Emly. They meet there in the centre of the river where Killaloe comes down, Limerick comes out and Cashel comes up. They meet there at a kind of a point in the river that's often pointed out to people. But like that, I would have presumed that you were in the diocese of Limerick now, out there. But as you said, you think you're in Killaloe diocese.
Killaloe, yeah.
It's very confusing at some places. that because like that he was cracked on, as I said. Although you get places like Castleconnell. Castleconnell is in Killaloe diocese, which again you'd imagine it being in Limerick diocese, and it's on the Limerick side, but it's in Killaloe. You know, there's some places that are very confusing, and the only way you know is when somebody's looking for a birth cert or something, you know, from the bishop of the area, and you find out that he's there, because you've no cathedral either in the Killaloe diocese. We have only the pro cathedral in Ennis.
Well, there's the Church of Ireland Cathedral.
The Church of Ireland, yeah, but I mean the Roman Catholic one. They never really had one in Killaloe. It's like in Dublin, they don't have one either, because you'd hear that you'd be referred to as the Pro Cathedral in Dublin. People have often said to me, "What does that mean, the Pro Cathedral?" That square, do you know, that was up in trouble there a few years ago. Do you remember, Tom? There was a site in Dublin where a guy was using it as a car park.
That's right. Yeah. Up the top there past Marlborough Street. Yeah.
There was a guy who used it. I don't know whatever became of that. This guy had this site, and he maintained. He was using it, I think, as a car park. That was the site actually that was sanctioned to build this cathedral for Dublin, which I don't think it didn't happen. What happened?
Because you see, they weren't during the penal laws. Catholics weren't allowed to build churches on main thoroughfares. That's why the back entrance to the in Limerick, you couldn't put a church out in O'Connell Street, so they had the Augustinians had a back entrance. So that's why there was pro tem or cathedrals until they got the chance to build a bigger one. Then they just became the actual cathedrals. Then, you know, the one in Ennis and
something else that just occurred to me as well. In the Church of Ireland, the old Church of Ireland in Sixmilebridge, there was a beautiful window in there.
Was,
yeah, that was moved, wasn't it?
Was.
Where's it gone to? Somebody told me that.
Tumgraney.
Where? Tumgraney, spot on. Just dawned on me now. And I did see it now in Tumgraney, as you said, you know, because what's his name, John Madden was up there showing it to me, I remember. That was moved to Tumgraney Church.
And you know who designed that? That was done by what's her name?
Mary Purser.
No, Sarah Purser.
Sarah Purser, yeah. It's a beautiful window there. I remember that being in situ in Sixmilebridge, in the church of Sixmilebridge.
It was commissioned by his great-grandaunt Mary Ievers, who did it in memory of her parents and I think her brother who was killed. So yeah, that was a shame, and I don't think Norman's father ever got over that. You know, because
he never went back to church after that.
Yeah,
after it got moved.
Yeah, there was some vandalism going on at the church, and that's why they moved it. But he was devastated, you know. So
it's a pity. It's a pity moved in one.
Well,
you know.
if you move the archives back from Dublin to Ennis, you might be able to move the window back to Sixmilebridge.
So, because it's a pity that there was vandalism, I remember at the time. I remember that. And they were worried about the window, but it's a beautiful window. And I have seen it now back in Tumgraney. I was up there, oh God, it was 6 or 7 years ago, with John Madden actually. I go, oh yeah, because they were using that for lectures. They had a few lectures up there, which I attended. And I'm very familiar with John. And I remember him talking about showing me the window. Because I remember, as I said, being in the Church of Ireland in Sixmilebridge. And I remember the controversy at the time as regards moving it and that. I forgot now where it was. I knew it was. I thought you were going to say Bunratty or someplace to move to, but as you said, I remember seeing it now above in Tumgraney. I'd really forgotten about that, you know. Anyway, God, we're here nearly an hour already, and we'll have to do a proper program on the Ievers some night as regards who they were married to, who everything, and how they got involved in and the Limerick connections, because there are quite a few Limerick connections in the Ievers family. I know I've come across them over the years, and it's only if you haven't an interest in something, you may as well throw your hat at it altogether. And I have to admire you, Karen, for the interest you have in the family. It's good to have an interest, because if you have an interest, it means everything. You know, I know you need a lot of money with interest. Tell me about it. You know, but you need to have an interest. You know, how did getting personal here now? But how did you meet, both of you?
Oh, we met
at a friend's house in Jerusalem.
We met in Israel.
Because Israel, yeah.
I was married to an Israeli. My ex-husband is from there. I'm actually Catholic, but I was living in Israel, and Norman had come over with a friend of his, and he was staying with a lady from my church, and
Yeah.
that's how we met. And
I-
It's curious, curious. People probably say, ask me anyway. They probably wouldn't ask you, but they'll ask me. You know, they think me as the man that knows it all, you know. So they start asking questions. And like that, it's only an interest, as myself and Tom have, in history. If you have an interest in something, it means a lot. You know, if you have an interest. I am interested in families, how they acquired land, how they were able to keep the land, who they married. And it's great to work without. I don't like notes. I never use notes. You either have it or you don't, is my attitude, you know. And if you have a good memory, everybody, I do maintain it's the same memory. You either use it or you don't, you know. People say you have a good memory, a good interest, I put it down to, you know.
I didn't expect Jerusalem as the answer there. No.
No. I won't go into that. I got a shock when I heard about Jerusalem last December. But anyway, that's another story, you know, for another day. But anyway, first of all, anyway, can I thank you, Karen, for coming on at such. I mean, I gave you great notice already last year about this program, which people know me by now. Tom verified this. I usually wait till the last minute when I'm even looking for speakers, you know, for to give a talk. I usually get them about 3 or 4 days beforehand. But it's the best way, because I think if you have too much time to think about something, you start saying, what's he going to ask me, or what am I going to say? You know, you start pondering on these things, and they put you off. Whereas if you know, I had on the program that I had on local radio before, nearly every week, I tried to get somebody different from a different aspect of history. And I mean, Willie Walsh now, out the last bishop of Killaloe, I had Willie in the program. I had Conor O'Brien in Chiquinabove. He was on my program. And I mean, these people came in and took a chance, you know, took a chance and sat down in front of me. And like that, I don't like people with notes. Just talk away, you know. It makes it better, I think. Tom, I'm sure you'd agree with me, would you?
Yeah.
You got notes.
If we had notes, we wouldn't be wondering as much. But
Yeah, but it's terrible to see somebody that quoting chapter after chapter, you know. I've been at lectures where somebody is quoting and quoting from a book without giving reference, which is the worst thing. And he's quoting from really page for page. And if you're familiar with their book, that these people, it's very off-putting, because you really know what's coming next when they're quoting page for page. And let me tell you, I've been at lectures where people have had oodles and oodles of notes, and there's nothing more boring than somebody reading from notes. You know, it's spontaneity, I think, is a good thing. If you know your subject, you'll be able to answer, you know. I mean, I could throw smart Alex things at you now as regards the Ievers family, which to me would be, you know, you're saying, I don't know that. That's only time to be smart. You know, people throwing things at you, you know. Whereas I know what you know about a family. You can only know so much. You can't know everything, you know. But yeah, it's good. But it's interesting to read on the Ievers and the way they did spend. The last thing I ask you about the spelling. What's the spelling? I-E, isn't it?
Yes, Ievers. Now,
yeah, Ievers, yeah.
ERS. Now, we have a stone inscription with a 1620, was it 22, was it?
I think
Or
so.
28, something like, anyway, 20 something anyway.
Yeah.
And John Ievers, I think it was the first John Ievers in the locality. And he has spelt it kind of with Roman letters, right? Because his John is like an I.
Yeah.
Roman style. But instead of, you'd imagine then if he was doing a Roman style, he'd be Ievers. But no, he did it Ieuers, which is a bit strange. But he did it that way. So that would, in my mind, lend a little bit more credence to the Ure connection from the north of England.
Yeah, because like, you would just imagine. I mean, I know a chap in Limerick now. He's IV Ivors.
Yes, Ivors, yes.
Yeah, and then there's you would imagine to just be Ivers.
Yeah.
But as you put in an E.
Yeah, but do you want me to throw you off even more? This will confuse you even more. I mean, like, we have a book here written by one of the Catholic Ivors, and he suggests that the Ivors come from the Iveragh Peninsula, and that they were here for.
Yes, that as a clan or a group of soldiers went over as mercenaries to England, and then later came back as Ivors.
So
So
yeah.
peculiar.
You know, I don't know. You can be guessing that till the cows come home, I suppose. You know,
Yeah.
you read so many different versions of things.
But
What I like is if you read something and you get somebody's written something else similar, then you know it's kind of right. You get two versions of roughly the same story, but there are some stories out there, and I mean,
With the Massey family, M-A-S-S-E-Y and
EY, M-A-S-S-Y.
Yeah. And some families, as you know, converted, if they were Catholic, became Protestant and changed the spelling of their name.
But that's the same in Brown. I
Yeah.
use the E in Brown, which
Mm.
kind of signifies Catholic, as opposed to B-R-O-W-N, is usually
Yeah.
Church of Ireland.
Mm.
You know, we could argue on it about the spellings of names and the way they were changed. There's so
But
many
the-
people out there.
When did the Ivors convert? Were they always like the Irish family were Church of Ireland, but did they convert to?
That's very interesting. Because England obviously converted it with Henry VIII.
Yeah,
What was he? Great protector only.
yeah, the Lord Protector.
He's
The
only
Lord Protector.
Defender of the faith.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So anyway, so there was a lot of war going on. There was a lot of religious war going on, not only in England, it
Oh yeah, everyone.
was all over the place.
Mm.
So then you had locally here, then you had the O'Briens, and to hold on to their estates, they had to go with the flow.
Mm.
And John Ievers, when he came down, or rather, it was Henry Ievers when he came down from Dublin, he worked as, it was recorded anyway, that he worked as a kind of an estate manager for the O'Briens out of Bunratty.
Yeah.
Now, he kind of then would have followed their lead. So the first son of Henry married a Catholic and obviously became Catholic. Now, that could have been done just in case
Yeah,
things popped back.
yeah,
Because with Mary Queen of Scots, because, you know, maybe she could have taken
Mm.
and then Catholic again. So
And he was disowned, though, wasn't he, later on, or disinherited?
obviously he was
Yeah.
disinherited because
Yeah,
things
that
Yeah.
happened a fair bit. Yeah. That
well,
happened.
he couldn't inherit anyway because of the penal laws.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So that was it. So, but he taken out his insurance anyway. That, you know,
yeah.
both went Catholic anyway.
They hedged their bets. Yeah. As some of them conformed in name. You know, they put down a
But it
Danish.
is just a name alone, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could. Anyway,
yeah.
first of all, anyway, we're here. It's now 25 to 9. It's time to say good night to you all. Anyway, so again, another thing. What about the Ievers house? I really forgot. The one in the corner of the street. It's in a dreadful state.
It's for sale, I think.
Still for sale.
It's for sale.
It's what? It's for
It's for
sale,
sale.
yeah. I was hoping Paddy Walden might buy that.
Mm.
So it's a pity that the house is in such a state. What's the title in that house? What's it called? Is it something Ievers, isn't it?
Iverstown.
Iverstown House.
Which?
Iverstown.
Iverstown, yeah. Do you know it, Tom? Are you familiar with the house?
I do. Yeah, I passed it there
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, right in the corner. It's a shame that it's in such a state really that wasn't kind of, because a lovely situation there where it is. But
Yeah.
we live in hope, as I said. Anyway, again, to thank you anyway, Karen and Norman, for coming on at such short notice, and
Delighted.
well, it's funny, and if you want to, I don't like to be too serious anyway, because there's too many academics on programs and it bore you to tears, you know. And I suppose I'm known for having a dislike for academics at times, you know. But there's nothing we can do about that. And to thank you both for coming on. Now the big problem I have here is switching you off, which I have every week, you know. But I don't know how to. And to you, Tom, I have it now. And to you, Tom, for thanking for coming on. If I can
Okay.
get this.